I go to bed and around 11:30 at night, my phone rings and it's his wife calling me, screaming and crying, telling me that her husband was dead. I'm going to deal with this pain and I'm crying. And then all of a sudden, I feel someone standing right in front of me, like literally standing in front of me. And when I raise my head, it's him.
I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of The Soul Inspired. Today I have Hadassa Munoz Rivera on, and she is going to be talking to us about spiritual experiences she's had in life, but not only that, the healing journey she's had throughout. So, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
You are so welcome, Joe. Thank you so much for having me.
And as we were talking about before we started recording here, you have gone through spiritual experiences, but it's led in different directions in regards to your
Mhm.
healing journey, right? So I want to dig into a few of those areas. When I first heard from you, I was very interested in what happened
Mhm.
with your experience involving your brother. And
Yes.
that's one area I want to talk to about as well. But the way I begin most of my conversations is to ask you if you were to look over your life and the journey you've had, and if there was a shift in your life of who you are now, if you could be specific about when that happened and who you were before that happened.
I would have to say 2018 when my brother crossed over. He was 10 years younger than me.
So it was the year 2018. And
2018.
so that was when things shifted for you. And who were you before that? Like, were you someone just standard lifestyle? Like, what kind of person were you?
So for several years before that, I was a devout and militant atheist, and I had become an atheist as a way of healing from religious trauma, from having grown up in an extremely religious, dogmatic home.
Mhm.
And healing from that, the only answer I had for that during that time was just get rid of anything that looked like spirituality or religion. So I said, no, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in any of that woo-woo stuff. I am science, science alone. And I became very militant about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you became, okay, so as a child, you were raised in a religious home.
I grew up in what you call the holiness Pentecostal movement. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico, and my father was an evangelist. He was a preacher, and my mom was what they call his helpmate. So she was a housewife and she had 10 children. I'm one of 10. I'm the second oldest.
Um,
So we lived in Puerto Rico up until I was 10 years old. There were only 8 of us. And then we left Puerto Rico and we moved to the States. And then 2 more were born. We were still in the church, and everything we did was around the church. And my father's answer to everything was the Bible.
mm,
So my worldview was the Bible and everything, literally the Bible. And but it's interesting because my dad was still looking and searching within Christianity for more. So we went from Pentecostal to Baptist to Methodist to all these different Christian denominations, also non-denominational. And then me as an adult, I became a charismatic. So I became part of the prosperity movement, the prophetic movement, all of that. And then there were many disappointments when I was in that. And that led me to Reformed theology. So I became a Calvinist. And when I became a Calvinist, it was no speaking in tongues, almost not even any singing. It was very by the book, by the book, by the
Mm.
book. So no spiritual experiences, because they would consider that demonic, or it was an influence that was not from God. Something happened during that time that was so devastating to me that allowed me to question even that, and the people and that were in my life. Um, that devastation was what opened the door for me to be presented by friends, coworkers, with questions about decisions that I had made that were very difficult to make, but I made them because I wanted to prove that I was loyal to God without
Mm.
taking into consideration that someone that was very close to me was being literally destroyed by my actions and my decision. So I went against my heart, and I was living in what you call cognitive dissonance. And when someone that I worked with asked me certain questions, I had to pause and think about what I had done and why I had done it. One of the things that this woman had asked me, she wanted to know who I was prior to being so dogmatic. So I went back to when I was a young adult and also to when I was a kid. And I started remembering the real me, even though I was being raised in a different dogmatic way of living. So that started to open my mind. And then the one person that I had done something very painful by my decisions was the one person that started to plant seeds of questioning the religious dogma and the historical facts of the religious dogma.
Mm.
And then also presenting other stories outside of the Bible that are from other cultures that are more ancient than the Bible, but the stories are exactly the same, but with different names. And I became intrigued by that. And then I was presented with um, Eastern philosophies, other religions, which I had been forbidden to even look at any other religion outside of Christianity. So I just started studying and learning about those things. But because they were still spiritual, and I had just gone through psycho-spiritual abuse, I couldn't embrace those things.
Mm.
So I gravitated towards atheism. And I will have to say that I needed to become an atheist to save my mind and my sanity. That was in 2012
Okay.
that I was an atheist. 2013, 2014, up until 2018.
Okay. First of all, thank you for sharing that. I know when I ask that first question, I always am trying to be cautious of people's personal lives and the things they go through. This is all our lives we're living, right? So
Exactly.
I appreciate you sharing it in a way that is still explains what you went through, but in a way that we can, without saying names and
Mhm.
being exact about who you're talking about. I find that hard to do sometimes myself as a songwriter. I'm very descriptive with my music, so that's not always easy to do. But I can kind of see the idea of what you went through, right? Raised in a
Mhm.
religion. It was very strict religion. I'll say it like that, very strict.
Mhm.
And You keep you're growing through your life, and you made some decisions in your life, and it hurt someone, and maybe more than once. I don't know if that was some more than one time,
Yeah.
but and some of it was based around the religious belief system, I
Yeah,
would say.
and I probably did with my words and the way that I was. I was very religious back then and very self-righteous.
Hmm.
And the mentality was us against them. I have the light, they are in darkness. They're all going to go to hell and burn in hell.
Mm.
But I have the answers because I have Jesus in my heart. Um, but not just the religion and not just the dogmatic teachings, but there's also cultural trauma. There's also family trauma that gets passed down from generation to generation. So
Mhm.
I'm not going to say that it was strictly the religion, but it was the dynamics of the household.
Right.
And there's no one to blame. There's no need to point fingers. It is something that is passed down from generation to generation until somebody finally wakes up and takes responsibility to work on their own healing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what it seems like you started to do when you started being presented different
Mhm.
ideologies. So, I mean, I have plenty of friends that are all of all different religions, and I respect them all. They all have different ideas of things, and everybody is their own person. So I'm
Mhm.
very loving towards everyone. And then there's different degrees of it, right?
Yes.
And that's where it gets a little tricky because if you are saying everyone else is not worthy of whatnot, then it starts to get a little bit. I don't know if I personally involve myself in that because then I'm putting other people down and away from love. And then I
Right.
get, and that's just my own personal thing, but I can respect everything you went through. And then because you went through all this and because you're questioning things, then you become an atheist. And then now I'm learning as I do all these episodes, atheism is becoming this topic where I'm have people trying to educate me on what atheism means, and I understand that it can mean so many different things to so many different people. Some people say it means that nothing happens and we just turn to dust. Some people it means um, that they don't believe in a God, but they believe in something else. Some people it like it keeps going down this. I keep getting fed all these different things, and I'm like, I'm just here to spread the message. I don't know what it all means,
Right.
but when you say it, it's kind of was the turn away from your religion that you were part of for so long.
Mhm.
And
It
you
was
do
like
this.
I
Mhm.
needed like somebody to throw me like a life jacket. So
Mhm.
atheism was my life jacket just for that period of time. And I needed that. I needed to be a completely clean slate in my mind because I had been bombarded by so much external dogmas and rules and regulations and so much fear. It was all about fear. And I had been together with everyone else who's in those belief systems. You you are manipulated in a way that every aspect of your life you have to filter it through this book. And not only that, but then there are those in leadership that are called the man of God or the woman of God. And then even for personal decisions, you have to run it through them as if you're not an adult who can make your own decisions. You have to go through them and have their blessing for many decisions.
Mhm. And when you said the word fear, that was the one that stuck out to me, and that seems to be a big push for a lot of people to feel stuck in their belief systems because the fears
Yeah.
keep them kind of in this bubble. And if you question anything, then that fear hits you and goes, oh, wait. And then, right, you're always trying to keep yourself back down because you have the fear hitting you. So it can be a difficult thing for anyone to kind of just open
Mhm.
up and have this mindset of what is it I want to believe in? What is it I
Right.
feel? What do I feel in my heart? So it's interesting that these this started coming to you. So you said 2012 to 2018, it was almost like you had a blank slate and you were
Yes.
trying to discover who you were or who and what it was you believe what what it was, the reasoning
Everything.
for who you were, everything,
Everything.
right?
Who am I? Because you're a wretched sinner your whole life from the moment you were a little kid. Something's wrong with you and you need to be saved and you need to be redeemed, right? So I become an atheist and the fear is still there, but it's a different type of fear. So now I have the fear of I better be cautious not to allow any other belief system because I'm an atheist and I have to abide by being an atheist. So
Mm.
I was still thinking in that black and white way of thinking. It's this weird energy. So
Wow.
if anybody that I met was a Christian, I looked down at them the same way
Oh,
that when I was a Christian, I would look down at an atheist.
oh, isn't that interesting?
So it was the same coin, just a different
You just flipped
side
it.
of the coin. It was the
You
same
just-
thing.
yeah.
Yes.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's going on, and you get to 2018, and
Mhm.
you said that was the year that you had some things happen in your life. So let's
Yes.
lead up to that. So what was going on, and what was it that happened in the year 2018 that
So my
really
brother and
shifted?
I had started communicating often. He lived in a different state in the United States than me and far from me. And we would have these conversations regarding our childhood, also religion. He had also become an atheist. So we supported each other in our atheist path and also joked a lot about the others that were still in the web of religion.
Okay.
It was so interesting, right? But during that time, he had certain things happen in his life that his freedom was taken away from him. So he had to be still in one location. And during that time, I came across a book in a bookstore. I went to a bookstore and I'm flipping through the books, and this tiny little book falls from the shelf and it hits my foot. And I pick it up, and it's The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. And I had never heard of that. And I read the backside, and it talked about the Toltec um, culture in Mexico. And it was a small book, but I felt drawn to it because the four agreements were be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, um, don't make assumptions, and just do your best. And I liked those four agreements. It was like, oh my gosh, if everybody in the world followed this, we wouldn't need religion.
Right.
So I started reading it and I just fell in love with the writings of Don Miguel Ruiz. And I just kept reading more books. And I started suggesting or sending those books to my brother for him to read. One of the books that he read before he passed away was The Mastery of Love. But it starts with self-love. And I had never heard of self-love because you're a wretched sinner, right?
Mm.
Only Jesus is the only one that can show you what love truly is. So him and I were now questioning atheism. So now we were like kind of agnostic. It's like maybe there is something out there. We just don't know, but it's not a deity,
Mhm.
like an old man sitting on a throne with a checklist, counting all the things that we do wrong and then we're going to get punished and sent to hell. Something shifted. And we were talking about unconditional love and questioning, wait a minute, if God is love and love is supposed to be unconditional, why are there so many conditions?
Right.
It goes against the very description of what we've been told that God is. On June 15th, 2018, it was a Friday. And on Tuesday of that week, I felt very uneasy at home. And I was thinking about my brother the whole day. And we would have conversations every Friday. Every single Friday, he would call me. And that Tuesday, for some reason, I needed to talk to him. So I decided to give him a call. And he was doing he was an electrician. He was doing some work in Tennessee. At the time, I lived in Colorado. So I called him and he was surprised that I called him and I said, "Hey man, you've been in my mind all day. How are you?" He goes, "Good. I'm doing this job over here in Tennessee. I should be done by the weekend. Are we still on for Friday?" I go, "You betcha. Love you. I love you too, sis." So then on Friday, I'm home and I don't get the call. I'm like, he's probably caught up on something. Maybe he went out with his buddies, got a couple of beers, whatever. I go to bed and around 11:30 at night, my phone rings and it's his wife calling me, screaming and crying, telling me that her husband was dead. And I'm like, "Your husband's dead." It still didn't connect in my head that she was talking about my brother. So as she's talking, all of a sudden it hit me that it was him. So I comforted her. There wasn't much that she could tell me because they had received all the information about how it was an accident at work that happened. He was electrocuted. So when I get off the phone with her, I tell my family member who lived with me, and we're devastated. We're crying. So I go back to my bedroom and I sit on the bed, and right in front of my bed where I was sitting, there's a wall, and there are two windows to the side, each side of the wall. So I'm staring at the wall as I'm sitting there. And I was angry at him because it was Friday and he was supposed to call me.
Right.
So that's what's going through my head. I'm like, dude, it's like, Sammy, his name was Samuel, Sammy. I go, "Sammy, I don't know how I'm going to handle this, dude, but I'm going to deal with this pain." And I'm crying. And then all of a sudden, I feel someone standing right in front of me, like literally standing in front of me. And when I raise my head, it's him.
Hmm.
And he's wearing this beautiful royal blue graduation cap and gown. And I'm confused because I'm sitting there and I look at him and I go, uh, "Dude, I thought you were dead." And he smiled, like he chuckled. And he said, "Sis, I graduated."
Wow.
And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, "Oh, okay." And immediately, we have telepathic conversation. And we were talking about our entire life. And all the memories were the good memories, all the interaction, everything that had to do with joy and love. I had no memory of any of the negative things. It was just love and kindness and joy. And it felt like if it went for hours. And it was like he was looking at me, but almost like saying, "Don't worry about me. Worry about you. You're still there. I'm not.
Right.
I don't have to deal with any of the stuff there. I
Hmm.
let go of this heavy thing, the heavy suit." So right behind him, I noticed that there was a doorway as we're finishing the conversation. The conversation went like, go after what makes you happy. Love is the only answer. There's absolutely nothing else that matters. And not only that, but we're more than this. There's so much more. It doesn't end.
Wow.
So that to me was like, it, I have to say that his skin was glowing. He was so happy. The love that emanated from his eyes towards me was so sincere and so pure. And the joy that I felt that he was experiencing was beyond anything else. And I knew that there's no way he would have wanted to come back.
Mm.
Like he did, he graduated. So then audibly, he says to me, now stop all that crying. And I stopped crying.
Mm.
And just like that, everything in front of me went shh, and there was the wall in front of me. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. And I put my head on the pillow and I went to sleep. And I never boohoo cried for him. I've been sad and I missed him, but I have not cried. That shifted everything for me. My paradigm, um, the religious background, the atheism. No one
Wow.
can tell me that I did not have that experience because I was fully awake.
Yeah, no. Okay, so I'm going to jump in. Thank you so much for sharing up to
You're
this
welcome.
point. This is why, again, I say this all the time. I don't care. This is how I do my this is how I do the things. So people are like, quit reiterating, re-saying what people said. I need to hear that on the spot. I need to hear these stories on the spot. Um, because they really then hit me and I can relate to what you're saying. I I didn't have that experience, but my experience was a shared experience with another person where we saw something appear and disappear the same way. And it was with another person. And that has helped me because I can verify.
Mm-hmm.
So when I hear your story, I don't disbelieve it because I've had something similar that I can verify.
Yeah,
So it makes no sense for you to, number one, it's very difficult for me to think someone would want to make something up like that when they've experienced such a trauma of losing such a loved person
yeah,
in their life. Number two, the way you describe it, it's similar to other things that I've heard through other people. I do have a few questions about it. So you had been told this on the phone from his wife that he had
yes,
passed, and she was obviously in distress. And you that this was at the same moment that you then kind of left and started kind of screaming out, talking to the wall, but you were really just talking out. You were
yeah. I
just
was voicing like audibly. I was just talking there to myself. It's like how I'm gonna handle this, and then I'm like, but you were supposed to call me tonight. Like it's Friday. I was stuck in my head.
right.
It's like, how could you leave
Mm-hmm.
without talking to me? It's Friday. Like I
Right.
became the big sister, like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, taking
Mm-hmm.
charge. It's like, how dare
Yeah.
you?
And one of the things I want to say is I really appreciate you telling the story because there's plenty of people in this world I'm sure that have had these experiences and it's so personal they won't mention it. And so to speak it out, I do appreciate that, especially for the audience that's listening in. I wanted to know when you were looking at him, did it feel as real as this right now?
Yeah, he materialized in front of me. Like I could literally feel the gown, the graduation gown.
Hmm.
It was right in front of me, and I'm looking at him, like I'm sitting and I'm looking at him in
Mm-hmm.
his face.
And have you had any dream in your life that felt similar to that in a dream
No,
state?
never,
Right.
never.
And you said it shifted immediately your belief system, which it would. I mean, how I it'd be hard not to then question when you came out of this. So you went to sleep, and when you awoke from your sleep,
It was the next day because it was late at night.
okay, so it
So
was the next
later
morning.
on, when I received information as to how the accident happened, it happened a couple of hours prior. So it happened in the East Coast because Tennessee is East Coast and I was
Mhm.
Mountain Time. And when
Mhm.
I received the call, it was 11:30. So it must have been what, like 1:30 in the morning in the East Coast. But when I read the article, there was an article in the paper that said more or less around what time he passed away. It was like around 10 o'clock Eastern time. So he must have passed away when it was like 7:30 in the afternoon, in the evening where I was at.
Okay.
So several hours later is when he decides to show up in front of me.
Right.
So it was several hours after he had the accident. Whatever had to happen between that moment where he left his body must have taken time, some kind of time, and then he was ready to show up in front of me.
So he passed away, and then just a few hours later is when that, the vision, or I don't want to call it a vision.
Yeah,
It seems like it was an actual,
because I
you
had been sleeping when I received the phone
embodiment.
call, and then after they gave me the news, I was fully awake.
Right. Well, of course, yeah, and I mean that
Yeah,
would wake you up. That's
yeah,
quite the news. So you'd probably be beside yourself.
yeah.
And he's standing there, and you guys are communicating telepathically, and then at the end, with his voice audibly, he says to you to stop crying because he's trying to calm you down to say,
And
I'm
he said
okay.
it the style that he would say it. Stop all that crying.
Right. So it's
And he had a very raspy voice, extremely raspy.
mhm.
And it was right after it was almost like I had a life review, but it was the life review of him and I, all of our interactions from the moment he came home as a baby.
Mhm.
I was 10.
Wow.
I was a little girl. I was 10 years old.
So
Yeah,
he had his life review specifically with you. He probably had his own life review, but
yeah,
he experienced a life review together with you
yeah.
to give you that, maybe that peace of mind, and to go through this with him. Do you think I have another question. Do you
Mhm.
feel that you can remember this event entirely?
Yes,
So you feel like everything that happened, you remember.
I remember. And I remember that there was a doorway behind him where the wall was, and it was a big open space. So I don't know if it was like a hall
Mm,
or a large room, but it seemed as if he had walked through that doorway and then he stood right in front of me because that's when I felt, I had no socks on. I was in my PJs
right.
and I felt somebody standing in front of me. And there's no air vent where the bed was where I was. So it wasn't like if there was an air vent and I felt the air on my feet or my legs.
Wow.
Somebody was standing in front of me.
So yeah, so it looks like he was paying a visit before he went to what comes next.
Whatever. It was I laugh and I chuckle because I feel so privileged to have had that experience. Had I not had that experience, I think I would have suffered
Mm,
more because even when I went to his funeral and there was an open casket, which he was completely against having that. Um, I went up to where they had the body, and I'm there with a couple of my siblings there, and I look and without even thinking, I say out loud, that's not Sammy. And I caught myself because wait a minute, everyone else is dealing with their own way of mourning.
right.
And this was my experience.
Yeah.
So I also had to remember that I have to be a little bit more sensitive towards those that are around me. But I looked at that empty sack of flesh
Hmm.
and I said, no, because he looked so good. I mean, he looked so good to me when he presented himself that night.
Right.
And he was so he was so full of life and joy, and the light that came from him
Hmm.
was so warm and loving.
You saw his essence
The
inside. One not
yes,
not to use a metaphor, or I don't know if you'd call this a metaphor, but sometimes I see things and then I visualize things and it reminds me a little bit of like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And then there's like that caterpillar and then they go in and then they shed the whatever it is and they come out as this beautiful butterfly. And that shedding is what the caterpillar was, right? It was like, or a kind of like it's almost like a snake skin and a snake sheds its skin and it's out. It's when you're describing that, it's like his true beingness
yes,
was no longer in that skin suit, that body that was there, and you could tell right away. You didn't feel it, you didn't see it, but you felt it more when his energy body was in front of
yes.
you.
And when he said he graduated, I just knew that his life mission had ended.
Mhm.
Um, and who am I to question another person's life mission or their trajectory? I'm not, whatever lessons they have to learn, that's their lesson, not mine. But I felt honored that he visited me. And I also was able to any type of resentment or memories of things that he had done that were frowned upon. I had no judgment towards that anymore
Mhm.
because I understood as a human living this experience, that was part of his story.
Wow.
Whether I agreed with it or not, that's part of his story.
So that gave you almost like a teaching
No judgment,
of
no
forgiveness
judgment
and no
towards it.
judgment.
Yes,
And I would then assume also that I'm not speaking for you, but I'm just asking that it going forward made you look at things a little bit different with other people and the decisions they make in their life.
not right away,
Okay.
not right
It took a
away,
little while. Okay.
because that opened the door for me to keep reading those books. And then
Mm,
it, I, it was almost like I became hungry to know about spirituality
right.
and other people's experiences and other beliefs. And I have not stopped learning and listening. And it's almost like I continue to unpack more and more wisdom and more knowledge. And
Mm,
I've become a different person that I was even a year or two ago. I went through my own healing of understanding trauma, pain, unforgiveness. Um, I knew that I had to take charge over my own emotional being, because a person can go to therapy for 20, 30 years. And yes, they're getting a band-aid, but at what point, I asked myself, I want to have mastery over me, over my
mm.
emotion, over my emotions and my actions. So I just continue to learn about decisions that we make, the way that we react may not always be acceptable, but the more you spend time observing your behaviors and your reactions, you get a better understanding of who you are when you look at your whole life story as almost as if you're a researcher.
Mhm.
So I went on this research mission of learning who I am. Who am I really? That would never have happened prior to 2018.
Let me ask you this. Because you're saying, I mean, this was only 5 or 6 years ago. This wasn't even that long ago, really. And so I can
No,
see why you've been on a, it probably increased your journey quickly. Like
yes,
you went from who you were, and then you're like, hey, I'm a seeker now of what is happening, especially having that kind of experience. I mean, clearly it got rid of the idea of, depending what you thought the atheist idea was that you had if there was nothing. But I'm wondering if it raise confusion around the religious beliefs, or was it more like, okay, because I mean, religion can have its good parts too, and there's
So,
things, yeah. I
so
just
what
wanted to know if you
happened
could touch on
was,
that.
for me to understand that that was his essence, well, that must be like what my essence looks like as well.
Hmm.
So I started to look at myself from a different perspective. I'm here having this human experience, but there's something else inside of me that is looking through these eyes and experiencing joy, pain, sadness, everything, anger, all of that. And I will experience all that while I still have the the package, the body, right? So that allowed me to love me, go within and start looking at all those limiting beliefs that I was born into, whether it was through religion or the family structure or the paradigm, the psychology of the family, the psychology of the culture, the psychology of the country, society as a whole. I started questioning that. And I remember one day, years after that, I'm doing my makeup in the mirror, and as I'm doing my makeup, all of a sudden I caught my eyes. I caught my eyes. I had never looked at my eyes, like like literally looking into my eyes.
Hmm.
And it shocked me because I'm like, oh, you're in there.
Hmm.
And I love you so much.
Oh my goodness.
And I just started bawling
Yeah.
because I realized that up until then, I I had never seen me.
Hmm.
We're always so worried about, do you see me? Or we want to get this external validation all the time. And when I saw me, it did not compare to any type of external validation that I've ever received, ever.
Right.
It was like, wow. And then I remembered, okay, I was once a little tiny newborn baby. And when babies are born, you play with their little hands and their little toes. And with so much love and care. And I'm thinking, well, if I was that tiny little baby, why can I not treat myself that way? Even though I'm older now and the body has aged.
Hmm.
So that has also been part of the, I call it the evolutionary transformation.
Yeah. In a way, it's like finding yourself. It's seeing yourself for the first time, even though you've lived your life as yourself, and
Yeah.
you're
And
just
I'm
now
only touching.
seeing you.
Yeah. And I'm just scratching the surface.
Right. For people who are listening, when I hear something like that, I see it as a place where maybe you can help someone.
Mm.
Is there anything that you can think of that you've done? Is there any type of change you started making in your life that started to kind of open up your mindset to that? You said that you were reading books and these types of things, but was there anything in regards to like a daily practice, or was there anything that people can take that if they're trying to find this place that you found? Because not everyone's going to have the experience you had, and
No.
it kind of opened everything wide open for you. Some of us, we got to do it gradually. And I'm just wondering if there's any insight you can give to anyone on that.
So I delved into Eastern teachings, Buddhism, um, Paramahansa Yogananda is one of them. The biography of a yogi that really spoke to me. Um, I started listening to Wayne Dyer podcasts, things that have to do with love and kindness and affirmations. Louise Hay was a huge inspiration in my life the last few years. Um, I went into the New Thought movement. And recently, within the last year, I found the teachings of Neville Goddard and
Mm,
Joseph Murphy and Edgar Casey and Florence Scovel Shin. And the beauty of it all is because when I was a Christian, I studied the Bible very much. I used to teach it. I was really, really well versed in the Bible. I used to preach at people.
mhm,
But learning about the new thought method, thought or the movement, whatever it's called, and listening to Neville Goddard and all these other teachers has allowed me to look at the Bible completely different. I don't see it as a historical book anymore. I see it as the story of the human experience. And when you read the Bible, everything's in there. Every crime that you can think of that a human being can commit to another human being, it's there. And also all the beautiful things are all in there. So that to me represents humans,
mm.
our own human experience, but laid out in a story with a bunch of characters, but it's actually really you. Now I can read the Bible. I could hear anything that has to be with Christianity. I can listen to people talk about God. I'm not triggered at all
Mm.
because now I have a completely different paradigm.
Right. I love that because, one of the things, and I've been very stern on this in this podcast, is the acceptance of everyone. And I've really put that down there. Sometimes I get different comments that come through, but for the most part, what I'm saying is we're all going through a journey for some reason. You had your journey in the first part of it, and then it switched. And what it sounds to me, and if I'm summing it up, it's almost
Mhm.
like your awareness opened up. So your
Mhm.
awareness of what things meant. And you're also saying to follow the teachers. There's teachers that continuously keep showing up, you know, because you're naming these people you're listening to and you're taking pieces
Yeah,
of each, right? And not be afraid to look for different teachers because, okay, if you listen to a teacher that you don't agree with, that's fine.
fine.
Then you can move to the next.
Yes,
So it's not to be scary, but that fear, it's I think breaking the fear and finding those
yes,
teachers, and then you can shift that awareness and see things in a different light. And it's not to say the Bible's bad or the Bible's good and all these
no.
different things. There's so much out there like that. And it's just the way you see it is different. I've never had anybody say that yet. So I appreciate you saying it the way you did it because,
It's
mhm.
very different. And also there are others um, I learned about Ho'oponopono, which is the Hawaiian prayer, which is I love you, please forgive me. Um, I forgot the other one. Thank you. And I learned about all these other teachers. Joe Dispenza
Mm,
allowed me to learn what it is to recreate me because I didn't know who I was. I had no idea. So I needed to become somebody completely new, a new personality without all of that baggage that I carried with me. Because a lot of times we think we are who we think we are, but it's based on what other people have told us or imposed on us. So outside of me being a Latina woman, a Puerto Rican, any of those things, right?
mm,
There are all these biases that are attached with all those labels.
mhm,
There's something greater and deeper within me that makes me who I am.
mm,
That's outside of the confines of even planet Earth.
mhm,
So it's there's such freedom. And I'm not gonna say that I'm like this 100%
right,
24/7.
right.
It isn't. There's
Mhm,
still things within me that are triggered. And I'm so glad when those things happen because I pause and I realize, oh, there must be something else inside within me that I never knew it was there, but it needed to be shaken up a little bit so that I can address it.
mhm,
I can fix things, heal from it because it's really up to me
mhm.
to save me from all of those. And when situations or people come into my life and they trigger me, yes, I get upset and angry and I feel the trauma in my body, but I'm able to say they are a gift to me right now because they have played the role to shake things up a little bit inside of me so that I'm able to address those things so that I can continue going towards whatever next growth I must go. Because a lot of times we want our situation to change, our lives to change, but we think that our life is going to change being the same person that we were and
Mm-hmm.
expect things to be different.
Mm-hmm.
When you start shifting those things around and clearing that out and pouring compassion on yourself, doors open, opportunities happen, different types of people come into your life because you're no longer that.
Right.
Certain individuals will drop out of your life and or you'll be able to because you're not in that needy place anymore of waiting for the external validation, you're able to basically say, this is not good for me.
Hmm.
This lasted for this amount of time because it was for this purpose. Now I need to move this direction.
Hmm.
I've learned the lesson. So then you graduate.
You just spoke on so many things. I love the way that you put, I hope everyone's listening to this because I've had many conversations with people over time about manifestation, changing your life, bringing abundance in your life, whatever that means, right?
Yes.
And you're right. There's this idea that we can just will it into our life being the same person we are. But we're in our circumstance because of who we are.
Correct. We've
So in
manifested it.
right. So in
But
order
and
to
I don't want to, I
yeah.
don't, okay, let's just say, okay, we're constantly manifest,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's negative or positive. It's all about whatever choices we make. Some choices that we make will lead us to this, other times it lead us, but we are the ones, we are the captain. We're the ones that are driving this vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
It's us. It's us, right? So when we start being the observer of the way we think, the words that we use, then we're able to say, oh, wait a minute, because I have this limiting belief in my life. This is why I am the way that I am, or I do the things that I do. The moment that you start taking full responsibility for your actions, for your thoughts, and for your words, not as a judgment, but with compassion and understanding, then you're able to, like a loving parent, to guiding a child, you can guide you and things do change. And sometimes you have to stay in a certain situation that's extremely difficult for a long period of time, longer than you think it's going to be. But it's because there's a lot of healing that has to happen because whatever's ahead, there's no way that the you that you are today, because when you get there, you're going to sabotage it. You will destroy it because you're still the same person that you are today, and you will not be able to handle that.
Right. I like how you said that because you're right. Because there could be some people that listen and say, "Are you telling me I'm in this circumstance because I did it to myself?" And you become that role. And I understand that. And you're right. If we're in a situation that we're needing to heal through, we need to heal through it before we can handle that next situation.
Yes, Joe,
And
and things will repeat themselves
yeah,
until we learn.
to see if you've learned the lesson,
And
right?
it's
Hmm.
actually it's I call it grace when things repeat themselves again because the universe is giving you another chance for you to look at the situation. It's very similar to before. Will you handle it the same way? Or will you handle it? utilizing the new tools that you have been acquiring by reading the books, by talking to other people that are a lot wiser than you are you willing to put your pride aside for a little bit?
Hmm.
And at that moment, say, you know what? I'm not going to handle this situation the way that I did 5 years ago. I'm going to handle it differently because then the result will be different.
Right. That is great. I mean, there are books out there, obviously, like The Secret and all these different things talking about manifestation, but um, and some people say, oh, well, it didn't work. And I think because it gets deeper than that, right? We have
Yes.
to learn to use the tools that we're learning to use. And if we do that correctly, then we can kind of move into that next stage and keep moving forward. So that is great. That's great. Does this just a sidestep for a moment? Does this have to do with, I know you wrote a book, I believe I think it's the one
Yes. So one
behind
of the
you.
things, so I wrote a book. It's called The Alchemy of Words and Thoughts. So I had started writing poetry in 2014, 20. I've always loved writing since I was very young. And I would write down my thoughts as a way of healing. And I did the journal, the diary, all of that. Back in 2000, in 2022, I was approached by a friend who was creating an anthology, a book with a bunch of co-authors. And she knew that I had written poetry because she had read some of my poetry. And she is a publisher friend of mine. And she said, would you like to be a co-author in the anthology? And I said, sure. So she was coming out with volume 2, and I submitted my piece. It's called Time Travel. Time Travel was a piece that I wrote in 2019, just a year after I
Mhm.
had that experience with my
Right.
brother. And time travel was me going back to the various times in my life that were very traumatic for me, going all the way back to when I was a little girl. And in time travel, I'm going back as an adult woman, sitting with me and talking to me and comforting me. I didn't know that I was doing childhood healing. You know, there's all these therapies that people
Right.
do. I had no idea when I wrote that piece. I just
Wow.
sat down one day and I started writing, and in my head, the words knock, knock came up, and I wrote, knock, knock, open the door to your heart, open the door so that love can flow through, or something like that.
Hmm.
It's in the book. So I, as I'm sitting, I'm writing that I'm traveling back in time, time, times that were very difficult for me. And it was an exercise of self-healing. And I didn't even know. So I submitted that. But before I submitted it, I remember that I was living in the Bay Area and I went to a metaphysical store because now I'm searching after my brother passed away. I go to this metaphysical store and there's all these books and candles and crystals and all that stuff. And in the back room, they were having a open mic night. And I went just to listen to what they were singing, playing music, and also there was poetry. Apparently, one of the artists that was supposed to be there that night did not show up. So the woman hosting the event says, is there anyone here in the audience who would like to read or any type of talent? I had never read my stuff to anyone, but I heard a voice within me say, do it. So I'm like looking through my phone, looking at my blog, because I was keeping them in a blog that was just for me. So when I opened the blog, the one that came up was time travel. So I'm nervous as hell. And I go, I have something. So she opened the mic for me and I read it. And as I'm reading it, I was I'm in the book. Like I'm not in the book, but in the poem. Like I'm literally there
Hmm.
as a kid. and the various stages of my life as an adult, I'm seeing the visuals in my head. So when I'm finished, I look up and all these women are wiping their noses, wiping their tears. And I'm thinking, I don't want to make anybody cry.
Right. Yeah.
But these were grown women like me
Hmm.
that were still holding on to a lot of pain. So in my heart just swelled. It's like I became grateful for the traumas.
Hmm.
Had I not gone through that, I would not have been able to write what I wrote. And I wouldn't have been able to impart that piece that I read to those women. And that's how it started. And then I that's the piece that I submitted. Then I was asked to submit another piece for the third volume, and that one is called I Love to Write. And it's based on my love for writing, my love for words. But I'll tell you why I love words. Words are thoughts, and thoughts are words. And we have so much power to change our thoughts and eventually change our mood and be in control of the thoughts that go through our mind and the words that we use, even when we speak against ourselves. So I put everything together. I also quoted a lot of the resources and tools that I've used. It's like a guide. I have a reference list in the back of all the people that have helped me. They have been my mentors, though I have not met, only one I've met in person.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
That's
And
great.
there's a section in the back where you can write about what pops into your head while you're reading the book and what other things you want to revisit as you go on your own healing journey.
I always love that in books when that is included because it's almost like an activity book in a sense because you're kind of becoming part of the book a little bit. I like how
Yes.
you include that. That's really
And
interesting.
Joe, I want to say that we all have the medicine. We carry the medicine. We just don't know that it's there. And
Mhm.
you're your own healer. You are your own guru. These are all these external gurus or teachers, they're gifts that have been given to us so that we ourselves do the work and heal ourselves and become our own guru. Because there's nothing external, it's all within.
Wow. I love hearing about the writing, being a writer, right? Because that's the way my music comes out is it's self-healing. And I know the exact when you explain what happened to you, I've had that happen with my music, so I can completely relate to that. And it's powerful and humbling at the same time, and it allows people to feel. So words are so strong. So that's beautiful. And the actual book, that one is called The Alchemy
So
again.
it's called The Alchemy of Words and Thoughts, a journey of evolutionary transformation.
Perfect. Okay, and I'll make sure that I get a link to that too, because I like to include those in the notes.
It's available on Amazon as a soft copy, and also the ebook is there. It's available.
If people want to find out more about you, is there like, do you have any other
So
areas? Like, do you have a
I
website
also
or anything?
so
Or
I started a YouTube channel. It's called Evolutionary Transformation. And I just did that channel just for me to do the spoken word, my poetry with a little bit of music in the background. And just a few weeks ago, I discovered that I could have the poems that I wrote in the book using AI. Um, the poems have become lyrics. So I have videos. I actually created a playlist of my poems as songs.
oh
And
wow.
I never knew that they could be songs. So the app is what did the arrangement and the vocals because I cannot sing for the life of me, but I love to sing. I just can't sing. And but the words, the lyrics are my poems that are in the book. They're published.
Wow, and that's on your YouTube channel called Evolutionary Transformation.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the easiest way for people to communicate with you too if they're
Yes.
going to contact you. Okay. I love that. I mean, we always hear bad things about AI, but there's a perfect example when it can be a good thing, right? I mean, it can do things that we haven't if we can use it for the good, just like everything, you just got to find the good in everything, right? Just a few last questions I always ask everybody. Actually, yours is a little bit different just because of your experience. I usually go down the rabbit hole of, whether this experience changed any fears of death or these types of things, because a lot of times I talk to people who've had near-death experiences. I think I would rather ask you the question of, does when you from having that experience with your brother, did it give you peace of mind that we continue on beyond this at all or anything? Like, did anything like that happen?
Not right away,
Okay.
because I had to investigate that experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
I still needed investigating it because I'm very inquisitive, and because I had been so manipulated
Mm.
prior to that, I've learned to question everything, even question myself sometimes. So I'm not afraid of dying, but I don't want to die. Not
Mm.
because I'm afraid, but because I love life so much.
Right.
And as I keep getting older, I know that I don't have another 50, 60 years ahead of me. However, I want to make sure that the years that I do have ahead of me are years in which I am actively becoming a better human being every day. And I'm growing as a person and acquiring as much wisdom as I can. Because to me, it doesn't make sense to become older and not be an elder,
Mm.
someone that is a fountain of wisdom that can impart that wisdom to the next generation and make a difference in this world. We are lacking people of wisdom.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And especially when we're living in a time where if it's almost, you look at certain people that they have trouble aging. They keep trying to make themselves younger, but we need that we need wisdom. We need elders. We need wisdom.
I
I appreciate how you said that
Yeah.
because it's true. It's something it's like another fear. Oh, we're getting older. We got to keep, you know.
So I would recommend, there's a video I put out there. It's a poem that I wrote. It's in the book. It's called Faithful Vessel. And it was an ode to my body, to this vessel.
Mm.
It's been very faithful, though I inflicted mutilation. That's one of the sentences. For so long, I spoke against it for so long. I
Yeah.
wasted so many years complaining about my body, body issues, and just a waste of time. It's gonna get older. It's gonna wrinkle. You're gonna have stretch marks. You're gonna lose hair. Your hair's gonna go gray. It's a beautiful thing to get older.
I love that. You mentioned that you don't have the fear of death, but you don't want to go anytime soon, kind
Oh
of thing.
no, I don't.
But does it make you feel like you're at least, do you feel like your brother's in a good place from
Oh
that
gosh, yes.
experience?
So a
Is
year after that, my dad transitioned. He
okay.
also went the other side, and I did not mourn. It was like, oh, okay, now they're together. So my dad died on the 15th of January. My brother died on the 15th of June, and
Hmm.
they both shared the same birthday, March 13th.
Oh, wow.
And they were both knuckleheads. They were very, very so much alike. They butted heads constantly.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that makes sense that now they're
Mhm.
together.
Right.
But I feel their presence. And again, whatever negativity they carried when they were here, I don't have to hold on to any judgment or any resentment or any unforgiveness
Hmm.
because that was their journey here. And their essence is not attached to what happened here.
Right. And you felt that when you saw your brother, you felt
Oh
he had
yeah,
graduated and it was all
yeah,
positive, right? There was none of that negative stuff that was attached.
yeah.
So,
When my father was dying, I had the chance to speak to him over the phone. And it's interesting because it happened in Florida and I was in California. So there's no way I wasn't able to go. And he had had a very difficult week, couple of weeks. He was nonverbal. And my mother called me. She was with him and gave him the cell phone so that I could speak to him. And he was not responding at all. And there was something that him and I would do when I was a teenager. And being one of 10 children, when we would go on rides in the van, we would fight over who was going to sit on the front seat so that we could play with the radio and choose the songs and all that back then. This is in the 80s. And him and I would say to him in Spanish to put the radio on, but I would say it backwards. And
Right.
only he and I knew what we were saying. So only he and I had that special connection. So
Hmm.
when she puts the phone next to his ear, and I say in Spanish, I said, Daddy, put the radio on. So I said it in Spanish, and it's Papi pon el radio. But I say it backwards. I said, Ipapnocleoidar. He responded. He literally lit up. And she's like, he responded. What did you say? What did you say? And I said, I just told him to put the radio on, but in Spanish backwards. So something triggered. And then I was able
Right.
to say to him, I know that there's a lot of fear that you're dealing with right now. It's okay. It's okay. I forgive you. So my experience with my brother allowed me to forgive my dad
Mm.
wholeheartedly and allow him to go through that moment of crossing over at peace because he had the dogmatic religious stuff, of burning in hell forever. I did not want him to have that in his consciousness.
Right.
So I said,
Wow.
no, you're going to be okay. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Well, that's beautiful. And that, again, that's something you carried over from that initial experience. And then as you've continued to grow through your journey, the the last thing I always ask everybody is it's just from your heart what you feel. And it's just if you were to think of the reason we come here, what would that be?
We come here to love and experience life to the fullest, and the pain and the sadness. We're here to experience everything. And we are given chances to respond and not react. We're here to grow. We're here to learn. Be a better person today than you were yesterday, first to yourself and then to others. You can't give something that you don't have at all. Every day you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Just give yourself some grace, you know?
No, I do love that. And it's really the idea that we're here to just go through the journey and to keep
Yeah.
growing, right? And I get that a lot from a lot of the people that answer that question. But it's always said a little bit different with each person. And that's one of the favorite reasons why I like to ask that question near the
Yeah,
end.
don't wake up in the morning and say, oh my God, it's Monday. No, it's like, oh, it's a new day. It's a
Right.
day full of opportunities. Let's see what wonderful things come my way today.
Yeah.
And if something happens that throws you off completely, oh, you know what? They just threw me off a little bit, but
Right.
I'm still hopeful that wonderful things are going to come my way. So your mood changes and the way that you present yourself to other people, is different, but you're mainly doing that for yourself.
Thank you so much, Hadassa, for being on. I really appreciate it. You've
You're
shared a
welcome,
lot of
Joe.
your own wisdom and told us the experiences you've had. So I appreciate it. I really do from my heart. I usually turn to the camera as well and just say, please like, share, and subscribe. You guys are been awesome. The audience that has grown at So Inspired has been amazing. And the questions that come out in the comments, I love the questions. Trying to keep them positive, of course, but I love discussions going through and it opens up there's things that I've seen that some of the even the audience have said that have, oh, my mind sparks. I go, okay, I never thought about that concept. This is the beautiful thing. If I were to say anything in my own, this is your interview, but if I were to just say to everybody, one thing I've learned from talking to all these different guests so far and it's still very early in this journey, it's that to be open a little more to listening to
Mm.
what other people have to say. Just because someone says something doesn't mean you have to believe it right away. Don't be afraid of what they're going to say. Just listen to it, see how it resonates with you, move away from it. And if it still does, take what it will in your own body. We know what we feel. So just trust that you'll be okay. I think before I started really talking to all of you guests, I'm talking to you, Hadassa, as well.
Yes.
I would listen. I would listen to teachers. I would listen to people, but I don't know if I was really listening. I was
Mm.
listening enough, but I wasn't truly listening. And I don't know what that means. I would hear it, but now instead of it just being me hearing it, I'm feeling it and then making my own assumptions or whatever I feel, and it's helping me grow. Does that make any sense to you? Do you feel that way?
To me, it's almost like everything's frequency and energy. So there are certain things that in the past you probably were not able to capture because you were in a different, like a radio station. It was just a little bit off. And
Mhm.
as you've continued learning and growing and listening to people, it's like the radio dial has been moved a little bit. So
Mhm.
then when that information comes your way the next time, and it could be the same thing that was presented to you before, but you just didn't capture it. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, that
Mhm.
makes sense. So that in itself is a testament to your own growth because you are expanding your consciousness. And now you're able to catch because everything's there in
Mhm.
the unified field, everything's there. It's just that sometimes our antenna is off a little bit.
Right.
So the more we work within ourselves, the more we are able to become this vessel that all this. So then when the information is shared, it will make sense. But none of this would have made sense to me years ago.
Right. It almost changes your reaction because I think I was more reactive before.
Yes,
I don't react in the same way.
yes,
I still may not agree with something,
right. But
but
you don't
I'm
you're
taking it
not
in.
reactive. You're more
Right.
because you're expanding. So here
Mhm.
we're here to experience expansion.
Oh, I love that. And that's a great way to end this. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for being
Thank you,
on the
Joe.
show. And hopefully we'll continue to stay connected. I would, encourage everyone to check out your book and all the things that you do. So thanks so much, Hadessa.
Thank you so much, Joe. Take care.
Thank you. So